whose Ray's daughter is joining us, and she also is from New York. Maureen Sullivan is here from down in near the farmland. Hal and Linda, I thought Hal and Linda were up in North Carolina, but yet there's not here yet. They're out in Port Orange. Chet is with us, and Chet is here in north of Miami Shores, and Alan and Eddie are in New York, along with Daniel Sorkin. Pat Sullivan is in New York. Katie is in New York as well. We got Katie, Daniel, Ray.
Katie, my daughter Katie is in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Oh, okay, all right. So we got New York, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Hi, Katie. Alan and Eddie in New York. Chet is here. Hal and Linda, I think, are in Port Orange. Dennis Walcutter's in Port St. Lucie. Pat Sullivan is in New York, having discovered the pool and delightful weather. Cindy and Larry Deach. Cindy and Larry Deach are from Port Orange. Hi, Dennis Walcott in Port St. Lucie. Dennis has been with us from the very beginning. So I'll take a couple of minutes and see how everybody is doing. That's John and Christine Sloan, also from Port Orange. Hey, Katie, tell me, if you can put up, how's the weather in Virginia Beach?
It is unbearably hot and humid and sticky.
Oh, hot and sticky. We love it. We love it. Join the rest of it.
We do not love it.
I like that. She'll fit right in here, man. Just jumps right in. I love that. Katie, you just jump in here. That's all there is to it. When something comes up, just jump in.
I think that's pretty much the whole eastern part of the United States. Warm, humid, and sticky and unpleasant.
I agree. I agree.
It's always hot and humid here, so what's the difference?
Yeah, I thought New York is like 78.
Yeah, but it's like 78 of humidity.
Ah, okay, humidity. And of course, Andrea's out in the cornfield, aren't you?
I am, in fact, in cornfields. Corn. It's all corn here.
All right, and that was Judy. And Chris Diaz made an increase out of birthday this week. So he slowly made it in here today. So let's go around one more time before we do some announcements. We got Donald Grimmy is now taken over as our parish administrator. Andrea is visiting with us. You've met her before. I put the bio in. Andrea was shared with us before. Andrea is not well because she obviously likes working with Michelle and I don't know why. There's a certain, yes. Rick and Larry and Rick and Judy are here from across the way. Latzu. Michelle's nickname is Latzu, as in Z-O-O, not T-Z-U, Z-O-O, which we thought was very, very affectionate. Latzu. Where's Mark? Is he all right?
Yes, Mark is fine. He's taking care of Axel right now.
Okay. Danny Sorkin, by the way, we call the docent of New York. Seriously, if you're on Facebook, you need to see the places he goes. There are museums he finds that makes the rest of us who know New York look ignorant. I mean, seriously, it's unbelievable what he comes up with. Maureen is with us again from down in near the homestead, near the farmland. Dennis is up in Port St. Lucie. John and Chris are in Port Orange. Pat Sullivan. Notice the tan on Pat Sullivan. Notice the natural red I've been in the pool tan. Yes. We saw pictures of her surfing the other day.
Shade of lobster.
If you saw the Beach Boys surfing safari, the first couple of minutes, you will have seen her in one of the pictures going through the waves. I'm going to pay for that. We got Pam. How are you doing this morning, Pam, from New York as well?
Good. Hi.
How is the cat?
You don't want to know. She's had a little let's say the food resurfaced.
Aha.
This morning.
Okay. There's Chet, who I saw a week and a half ago, and it was good to see him. I have to tell you something that's annoying about Chet. His blue eyes are still as fabulous as ever, and he's got a head of hair. How he can have such great blue eyes and a fine head of hair, I don't know, but it's annoying. Chet, how are you this morning? Good to see you. Okay, we got Chet, we got Washington Heights, we got Katie from Virginia Beach, Alan and Eddie. Alan, by the way, is annoying. He sent me this stupid thing about laziness versus procrastination. And I thought, well, procrastination is an art form until I actually read what he sent. That's a sermon coming up. It was a very interesting thing on laziness versus we'll have to have group therapy for this one. Hal and Linda from Port Orange, Cindy and Larry Dees from Port Orange, Christopher Diaz, our resident polymath from North Miami, and Chris and John Sloan. Good morning to you all. Some announcements. So we got Andrea with us this morning. Ray Roldan has a guest, his guest being his daughter from Virginia Beach. Katie, make yourself at home. This is a very, very relaxed group. You may wonder if we haven't, a lot of these people have escaped from institutions. Obviously, the answer is yes. So you can enjoy that from a distance. On the 23rd of July, our next time we gather, I want you to know that we're having a thing on play. Now, the fact that a workaholic should be talking about play is as bad as when I talked about patience. So we're going to have the Muppets, Ice Age, a reading from the Cat in the Hat. Oh, stop. Look at this already. A thing from the Minions. Mark, good to see you. So just sharing with you on the 23rd thing on play. Then Andrea is back on the 13th of August. And after she's on the 13th of August, the board is going to meet with Andrea and then do some voting and going to probably have an annual meeting coming up, a special meeting of the congregation at the end of August to talk about Andrea and bumping up Michelle to being a full associate minister. Michelle has made a commitment to a full commitment to us. So that means that she moves into a different category. And I'm sure everybody will agree that will be wonderful. Book club continues. And again, one last time, 13th, we meet Andrea again. On the 27th, Michelle is back and probably a special meeting. And do let me remind you gently and kindly, if you can, to give as you are able. We still have bills and we still have things to do. Okay, greetings and announcement. Our memorial candle. Maria. I would like to take some time and light a candle in loving memory and keeping the memory alive of all those people who in the history of this country have suffered because they were a minority or misunderstood. That involves Native Americans. It involves islanders, people of color of various kinds. It involves people of class distinctions. It involves people economically and socially disabled. It involves a variety of people who have been offended and hurt many, many, many times over the years of this country being emigrated by non-Indigenous. Let's take a moment to keep those memories alive within our hearts, not just today, but every time we think of others. Remember those who are truly disenfranchised. Our first introit, our first music for the day, picked by Andrea, is Come, Come, Whoever You Are, if you would, Donald. Our call to worship this morning, I ask you to read this with me responsively. I'll ask you to read the indented parts. Hear the eternal calling. Come, gather in this sacred hall. We are kindred souls on a journey together, bound by a sacred covenant, carved of love. Hear the holy whispering. Beloveds, bring all of you into my hearth. All of me will bind your wounds and celebrate the joys. Become one people, ever growing, ever healing, ever welcoming. Heal the sacred singing. Silence awaits you. Come, be renewed. Enter in, discover what was lost, reconnect. Come, gather in. Come, gather in, and let us worship together. And those of you who would, if you would read to me the prayer together, may it be that wherever the divine invites me to dance, I accept. And wherever the divinity of my fellow human beings challenges my own, I seek the sacredness of connection over the hubris of division. Selah. Our special music, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
Basil Johnston, the Anishinaabe storyteller, in his essay, How Do We Learn Language?, describes the role of comedy and laughter in stories by reminding us that Native peoples have always loved to laugh. It is precisely because our tribal stories are comical and evoke laughter that they have never been taken seriously outside the tribe. But behind and beneath the comic characters and the comic situations exists the real meaning of the story, what the tribe understood about human growth and development. Of course, none of you would make the mistake of confusing storytelling strategies with the value or sophistication of a story. And we know enough about the complexities of culture to avoid the error of imagining animism and polytheism to be no more than primitive versions of monotheism, don't we? Nonetheless, the talking animals are a problem.
A responsive reading, if you would kindly read the indented. The womb of stars embraces us. The remnants of their fiery furnaces pulse through our veins. We are of the stars, the dust of the explosions cast across space. We are the earth. We breathe and live in the breath of ancient plants and beasts. Their cells nourish the soil. We build our communities on their harvest of gifts. Our fingers trace the curves carved in clay and stone by forebears unknown to us. We are a part of the great circle of humanity, gathered around the fire, the hearth, the altar. We gather anew this day to celebrate our common heritage. May we recall in gratitude all that has given us birth. And Michelle is reading again.
I define symbol as any structure of signification in which a direct, primary, literal meaning designates, in addition, another meaning, which is indirect, secondary, and figurative, and which can be apprehended only through the first. Interpretation is the work of thought, which consists in deciphering the hidden meaning in the apparent meaning, in unfolding the levels of meaning implied in the literal meaning.
Special music. And the reading after that, interestingly, is from Stephen King. Michelle, if you would.
You can approach the act of writing with nervousness, excitement, hopefulness, or even despair. The sense that you can never completely put on the page what's in your mind and your heart. You can come to the act with your fist clenched and your eyes narrowed, ready to kick ass and take down names. You can come to it because you want a girl to marry you, or because you want to change the world. Come to it anyway, but lightly. Let me say it again. You must not come lightly to the blank page.
A few years ago, a funny thing happened to me on my way to Chicago in January, which of course is the way that all really great stories start. And that really funny thing that sort of happened to me on my way to Chicago in January was that I died, which maybe is not actually that funny, but you have to admit, it's a hell of an opening line. It was my third year at Meadville Lombard Theological, and Chicago in January for a month of classes was tradition. And everything that year was a go for yet another trip when, following a routine cardiac stress test, I wound up hospitalized, and a week later undergoing emergency double bypass open heart surgery, like you do. Right smack dab in the middle of my first year as an intern minister, which was a bit of an inconvenience. It was not, however, the problem. If it had been the problem, then it would have gone something like this. It was the part where we were told a space shuttle had just left the Cape at exactly 8:07 Eastern, and a train bound for glory had interterminal velocity from California while its snowmobile full of gummy bears. I think I've lost the thread again. This is why talking animals exist. We'll get to why they are a problem. Our first reading came from the book, The Truth About Stories by Thomas King. And in that book, he writes a lot about his experiences growing up Indigenous and Greek in California, centered around where his father dies. Correction. Where he receives the news that his father has died. His father had walked out of their lives decades prior. And he found out by way of an inheritance notice that he was now the owner of a bar in Chicago with 2 other families, which he didn't know about and knew about him. In the end, Thomas King says the truth about stories is it's really all we are. And in every conversation we have as individuals, as small social groups, as a congregation, as a denomination, as a whatever label goes here, it's not just a conversation. It's not just a story. Because there is a beginning, there is a middle, and there is an end. There is a plot to that story. There's a plot to that narrative. There are protagonists and antagonists. There are movements and twists. There is finally a resolution of whatever built up tension happens in that statement. And sometimes those elements, when they blow by us in a flash, it's because the story is brief, the elements subtle, the stakes trivial. Sometimes the elements, though, they lead to a plot that reads like something out of a science fiction grandmaster's worst nightmare. The resolution not yet written. For example, this story. I am owned happily by 2 healthy cats a calico named Persephone, and a young Norwegian forest cat named Orpheus. You have already seen him this morning. This is a complete story. There are many unstated subplots, but the story is there. Exactly. Maureen's already proven the point right there. And it's more than a sentence because it conveys through symbolic language and metaphor certain identities and interests, and it begs for interpretation and connection. But not every story is written so simply. Many of us can, no doubt, bring to mind various headlines of late that, when examined through the lenses of symbolic language and metaphor, those threads of interconnection are patently visible. People are the same way. Buildings are the same way. Congregations are the same way. Everything is the same way. The French philosopher Paul Ricoeur, who taught at the University of Chicago's Divinity School from 1970 to 1985, once responded to René Descartes' infamous "I think, therefore I am" thesis by calling it, quote, "an abstract, empty truth, vain and invincible." Ricoeur had been profoundly influenced by the rationalist process theology that had emerged out of the Chicago Divinity School at the turn of the 20th century, and he was, of course, immersed in the humanist philosophies of his own French education. And Ricoeur wrestled at the brevity of Descartes' cogito. Response he initially called a hermeneutic of suspicion, something that is just a word for a method or a theory. Ricoeur wrote that we should be suspicious of the ease of which any assertion was stated and accepted, and by extension, be suspicious of everything related to it. If a statement was proven not to be valid, either empirically or philosophically, or worse, false, any work stemming from it must be regarded as tainted. One second. Speaking of young Norwegian forest cats, are you good? To quote a phrase, any of those works should be regarded as fruit of the poisonous tree. And it makes my heart sing that we, as Unitarian Universalists, can and do consider Augustine's theology of original sin to be fruit of the poisonous tree. As Ricoeur explored his nascent and developing hermeneutic of suspicion, he realized it was a gateway to something larger, to something deeper, to something older, a hermeneutic of faith. And in that hermeneutic of faith, one that was reached first by exploring the world through suspicion, one got there by finding enough touchstones that revealed themselves through interpreting an infinite universe of symbols. Because then a framework of faith that was unique to the individual, understood only by them, that made sense only to them. That's how he got there. You understood the world by doubting what you saw, processing it, evaluating it, and going, oh, because I understand X, Y, and Z, I can get to A. Ricoeur's method of faith compels us to acknowledge and interpret symbols metaphors, and other iconic representation of non-tangible language constructs. That's a lot of big words. But meaning itself becomes an exchange, a negotiation between us as individuals and something we do not yet fully understand. As the professor wrote in 1974, shortly before he left the University of Chicago, in life, the absence of meaning is remediated only by the totality of a world of signs and by the interpretation of those signs. Think of it like this. You think, therefore you are, right? Except what you think you are is just a reflection of everything that is. So if everything you are is a reflection of everything that is, you are looking in a cosmic mirror and seeing a fragment of something so grand, so beautiful, so mysterious. We cannot help but conceive of it as ourselves through representation. And since that might be fertilizer, we doubt it. That is the natural skeptical reaction. It's healthy. So we poke at it. We write our own stories in response to it. The stories of individuals and groups and communities and societies overcoming everything that tries to keep them down and out. And the more we do that, the more we succeed. The more we fail, the more we learn. And in all of it, the more doubt, the more suspicion slips away, because we have found common touchstones upon which to hold. And the more we find, the more our body acoustic is constructed of all those words and deeds of prophetic humans, and it all gives way to a way of faith. Put another way, as the Unitarian minister Theodore Parker said in 1852, I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but a little ways, but from what I see, I am sure that it bends towards justice. We evolved the simple declarative through the process of doubt and examination all the way to the prophetic hermeneutic of faith. Not necessarily because we believe, but because we write the story of us collectively and individually. And that story is a story of justice and a story of love. There is an episode of the animated series The Simpsons featuring Homer, ever the metaphor for the fool of Taro's fame, eating a handful of the merciless hot peppers of Quetzalcoatlanango during the annual chili cook-off. Those peppers are, according to Chief Wiggum, grown, quote, deep in the jungle primeval by inmates of a Guatemalan insane asylum, end quote. The peppers themselves are Technicolor red, yellow, and orange, glowing like a blacklight poster in a college dorm room. And when he pulls them out of the pot on his ladle, they glow and they just glow, and the crowd oohs and ahs while Homer remains arms crossed, unimpressed. And after drinking a candle, yes, really, Homer swallows many of these peppers. Then things get weird. Homer blasts off on a series of engrossing linked hallucinations, all exploring the meta story of the episode symbolically. Homer and Marge are doubting their love for each other and the conviction that they are, in fact, soulmates. At one point, Homer punts a turquoise tortoise across the desert to the foot small step pyramid. Tortoise motions for Homer to climb the pyramid, only to watch the pyramid dramatically increase in height and difficulty. Payback, of course, for his lack of patience. Homer scales the pyramid where he finds a faceless representation of his beloved Marge disappearing in the wind. And in a fit of frustration, he screams into the void, "Why am I here?" Enter the talking space coyote, voiced by none other than Johnny Cash. Who offers Homer some sage advice. Clarity, he says, of the mind is the path to inner peace. Now, the fool does not understand the metaphor, and he begins to ask many irrelevant questions of the space coyote until the space coyote starts gnawing on his own leg. He apologizes to Homer, saying, "I am a coyote." The talking animals are becoming a problem. One of our special musics today featured a group, Heilung, who works in reconstituting early Iron Age Northern Europe music and art into a new form. Much of their work is in languages not spoken for hundreds of years, recorded only in symbol or written word lost to time, sometimes less, leaving scholars to make a guess at what could have been, should have been, may have been. Heilung dreams the music and ritual of those times, bringing it forward to today, countering the darker, more destructive forces of the world. The featured song, Narupo, is an adaptation of a 17th century copy of a poem, originally recorded in a now lost 13th century manuscript, originally, this is important, an oral tradition from the eastern part of Norway. The poem itself is a mnemonic, a way to teach and remember the arcane rune names from the younger Futhark alphabet. In the video, the shapes the performers are making are the shapes of the younger Futhark rune alphabet. There are simple metaphors and complex metaphors, similes, analogies, analogs. Everything exists because it exists. Everything is symbols within symbols within symbols, and they speak to all who will listen. The practice of suspicion asks us to treat everything we encounter with a healthy amount of skepticism. The practice of faith asks us to treat the practice of skepticism as a tool, a gateway to a greater truth about the universe. The practice of faith reaches into the world of symbolic language, finding, interpreting, and broadcasting, leaving us to discern the next right thing. We are given autonomy and responsibility with that information, individually, collectively, communally. While the mystic no longer has sole claim to the universe, neither does the rationalist. And as the universe is translated and transformed from experiential unknown to discussable reality, we co-create a new way of being, a theology of balance, covenant of cooperation and mutuality. And it is as beautiful as it is hard. My brain may demand skepticism. My heart, though, whispers, have faith. So I do. So we should. Our future deserves no less, even if it involves talking animals. Selah.
Many of us were probably surprised by the special music from Heilung. It represented a different way of looking at life than probably most of us had ever thought. It goes back to a long, long, long time ago. It's probably buried deep, deep within us someplace, somehow. I noticed as the song got going, many of us kind of nodded off into rhythms, picking up basic ancient rhythms. Such is also, interestingly enough, what involves what we do next. According to archaeology, 10, 12,000 years ago in what we now call Turkey, what is the forerunner to wheat got planted and people were poor. There were not great communities, there were not large communities, although the earliest formal place of worship is located there from 10,000, 11,000 years ago, with symbols very similar to the ones we saw from Highland, interestingly enough. And they used in their simplicity bread and watered down wine. And this was the best they could do to offer friendship and fellowship. That gets passed down to succeeding generations and succeeding cultures, Hittites and others, and then finally into what we call the land of Canaan and all the pagan tribes. What we call Judaism, most people are shocked to find out, is 80% pagan and Canaanite in its background. And so the idea of bread and wine is not something that originates with Christianity. It originates long, long, long ago, deep, deep, deep within our consciousness of something bread. Yes, that's it, Andrea, right there. So we take simple bread and take a simple cup, because after Jesus died, his followers didn't know anything else but a simple bread and simple cup. And it was called agape. And people would gather and they would bring food and they would offer prayers and blessings and hugs and caring for each other. It wasn't until a civil war took place when Judea rebelled against Rome that the Jewishness and the paganness of simple bread and cup got lost. And as the Jesus message spread to pagan cultures, we couldn't have just bread and cup. We had to have sacrifices, making holy. We had to have rituals, special words, special places, special utensils. This is the way it was done, always done, but not originally with us. So at All Souls, we go back to the very, 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 very early practice in the very early gatherings of people who followed Jesus to offer bread and cup. Simple, basic, going deep, deep, deep into our history of human beings. So whenever we gather, simple bread, a simple cup, offered to anybody and everybody as a simple means of friendship, welcome, and how can we hold each other close? That does not work for some. And so we offer a circle of hope. Imagine us now all a circle holding hands. And then I ask you to repeat after me, if you will. Promise me you'll remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think. God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, and sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. And Andrea, if you would give us a short few words to send us off on our way.
Sure. Most holy God, divine source known by so many names and yet none. For all that we carry from this place, for all that we carried into this place, let us move into the world as agents of compassion. Let us seek those who need our hearts, need our hands, need our hope, need our light. Let our humanity be a reflection of everything possible. And let us be the love we wish to see in the world. For this we ask. Selah and Amen.
Our parting music, Trip the Light. And now may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and may the rains fall softly upon your fields. And when we meet again, may the divine in me greet and embrace the divine in you. Amen. Well, thank you all this morning. We've got Donald here, and we've got Andrea and Pam and the cat. And we've got Chet and Rick and Judy and Michelle and Mark and Maureen and Alan and Eddie and Daniel and Ray Roldan and Hal and Linda and Pat Sullivan and Cindy Deitch and Chris Diaz and Serge. And thank you for having your daughter visit with us today, Ray. Thank you very, very, very much. Thank you much.
You're welcome.
And we'd love to talk to her sometime if she's ever interested in talking.
She had to go get the grandson from the other granddaddy.
I can't hear you. What?
She had to get the other grandson from the other granddaddy.
Aha. Okay. All right. Well, blessings to you all. We've got a wild summer plan for you. I think on play. Andrea will be back. Michelle will be back. Lots of things happening. We do not stop in the summertime. Absolutely not. We may have humidity. We may have heat. We may be across from Western Sahara, but we do not stop. There you go. See you soon and blessings to you all. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody have a good week.
You too.
Daniel, you have a great week too, everyone.
Bye. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.